Hello. Hi, and we're live. Hi, everybody. We have the fabulous Dr. Gretchen Shibl, and you are a licensed psychologist.
Yes, yes.
Okay, you're a clinical therapist. And yeah, so I'm going to mention that once. She is a doctor, but she wants to be called Gretchen only. You might know her as Gretchen only in the chat. So, Gretchen only, thank you so much for being here. I just want to open by just thanking you and just saying how excited I am to be able to talk about this with someone who has not only an expertise in the subject, but a experience as well, a lived experience. So there have been so many people in our community that have shared that they are living with a chronic condition, whether it be, an illness, a chronic pain, chronic fatigue. I kind of have all three, which is really tough. And so I would love to chat with you and get your input and some of your experiences with it, because I think it can be beneficial to all of us. So, we
Where do we
talked a little
start?
bit about backstage about how you came to be into this space. You want to introduce yourself a little bit and tell us a little bit about yourself and all the
Sure.
things.
First, as I did with when I was on another stream, my disclaimer, of course, of my professional disclaimer is, obviously I am a psychologist, but I'm here just in the capacity of education and discussion, um, awareness. I'll be talking about some things as we go along, but obviously this is not a replacement for therapy, and you should, if you have something going on, I always encourage people to seek out therapy and professionals that they can have a direct relationship with. So I just want to say that, as well as, I have my own experience with the people I've worked with, and by no means I'll share in generalities, but not
Right.
specific because of
Hmm.
confidentiality reasons, obviously.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. So first, I want to just share a little bit about how I got involved with like SBTV, or not involved, but started watching. I was sharing with you a little bit ago that I watched the Aftermath show, um, and was really curious and interested about just, I mean, obviously, as you all have talked about, the stories, and just the amount of um, the trauma, the
Hmm.
control, and how I was just curious about how people get into it. I mean, whether, let's say they're not born into it, but how they're, how they kind of get into a situation like that, and then ultimately how they get out of it, because it's such a entrenched environment where
Right.
because of the mind control, it's so, you feel, a person feels so, like that's their whole reality. And so to even consider that there's something beyond that is, it's for that just blows my mind that people can rise above that and go beyond it, and be able to have something or some impetus to say, okay, I need to get out of here. And
Mm.
unfortunately, oftentimes that's bad circumstances, really bad circumstances. So thank you for having me here today.
Of
I
course.
really appreciate it. Any opportunity I have, I'm kind of a geek that way, to like talk about mental health or talk about, especially this area I'm really passionate about. I always am up for. So I appreciate the opportunity that we can chat today.
Of
Um,
course. I'm glad you're here.
yeah. So I don't know
Absolutely.
where, if you want me to share a little bit about like my um, background of like my chronic illness, or any
Sure.
something.
Whatever you feel comfortable sharing. And as we go along, I don't have any agenda, but I thought we could
Yeah.
just take some. If anyone has a question or a comment, please put question or comment before, your comment. And we have the fabulous Kelly Copter backstage. I see her little avatar, and she's starring questions. Hi, she's going like this, jazz hands. Hi, sweetie. So she's back there, and to make her job easier, thank you so much, Kelly, for offering to do this for us. And
Definitely.
just, yeah, to make her job easier, put question or comment. And I thought we could just kind of do a free form,
Okay.
whatever you
Yeah.
would like to share. And I'm sure it'll spark questions and comments. So,
Yeah, that's great. I
yeah.
mean, and I'm obviously it would be great for a lot of Q&A today because I'm sure a lot of people do have questions or things that they're
Mhm.
wondering about or, things that they're struggling with, obviously. Um, so
Absolutely.
I actually was diagnosed about 10 years ago. It's hard to believe it was that. I mean, some ways it seems long, some ways it seems short. Um, 10 years ago, about a year after my son was born, with autoimmune Hashimoto's. And at the time, I didn't really know what that diagnosis held. Actually, I should back up and say, for some months after I gave birth, and for actually that between the time, about a year's time after I gave birth until I got the diagnosis, I had fatigue, really bad fatigue. I had just muscle pain, joint pain. I used to jog and go and be fairly active, and it almost felt like even just climbing a short set of stairs made me feel like I had run a few miles. And I was like, this is
Mm,
not normal. This is not, and I hadn't done any activity. I'm like, this is weird. But for many months, I just chalked it up to, well, I'm a new mom. I'm not getting good sleep. It's a big life change. My body's under a lot of stress or has gone through a lot of stress. And so I didn't really seek out any medical, you know, I didn't really seek out any, um, like a doctor or anything to figure out what's going on. But finally, it was getting to the point where I was like, what is, something is amiss. So I
right.
went
Mm.
and I got some blood tests and kind of some extensive blood tests, and it came back that I do have both hypothyroidism and which is common and obviously with and then Hashimoto's thyroiditis. So basically, an autoimmune condition that attacks the thyroid gland, and so there's just a variety of things. Anyone who has that or has experienced it knows there's um, those exact symptoms I'm describing are very
Right.
common. Um, and at the time, though, I didn't know what it was. I was like, okay, Hashimoto's what? Like, I don't, like, what does that entail? So, of course, like any good person, I checked out Dr. Google and got
Oh,
really,
yeah.
and got really, really scared.
Yeah, I did
Um,
too. Yes.
like, really, the internet could be such a wonderful place for many reasons, and it can be a horrible place for many reasons.
Scary. Mhm.
Scary, exactly. So um, I got kind of in this down this rabbit hole of, oh my gosh, what is my life going to be like? And this was 10 years ago, and I'm in quote I still am in the producing years of my life, and what I mean, am I going to be like? You just don't know. It's that fear of the unknown and what this. And here I have a small baby, and I'm thinking, oh gosh, and I'm
Yeah.
just starting out more specifically my career path back then. So, um, yeah, I went through kind of a really scary period of just not knowing. I wasn't on any kind of medication yet to manage it. I finally went to a doctor, endocrinologist. Still, I wasn't necessarily. They didn't think I needed thyroid medication, um, but I noticed something, and at that time, I don't know if it was postpartum or just going through this scary period. I had marked down on my form with the endocrinologist, I have like sadness or depression type symptoms and anxiety.
Mm.
And this endocrinologist knew that I was a therapist, and he noticed that on the form. And I even mentioned it. I said, "Well, I'm having some sadness and some anxiety," and he goes, "Oh, well, you're a therapist, so you probably know how to handle that." I was like, um, "Okay." Like again, to put that down on a form, it takes some, you know, to reveal that, and then for the
Yeah.
doctor to kind of dismiss it just because of my career. So um, I realized then that a lot of people like myself suffer in silence because
Mm.
either they
Yeah.
have an invisible disability or illness, or they don't share it, they don't talk about it. And so that's what really um, started my like passion for to go into this area specifically.
Mm.
I still obviously see a lot of people with various, you know, um, not with, let's say, a chronic condition, but so important because there's so many people out there that don't feel isolated and don't feel like they have a community. And then
Right.
subsequently in 2019, that's when I got the fibromyalgia diagnosis. So um, kind of, kind of, I have to definitely manage my energy levels, as you well
Yes,
know. I know you said
absolutely.
that
Yeah.
you have your own. So it's not because of any specific trauma I can point to, but other than maybe some people say, especially with autoimmune conditions, they can.
Hmm.
There's so much unknown about these conditions, as we know, and there's
Hmm.
sometimes there's changes in hormone or like post pregnancy, post birth with women, especially with the thyroid. So, but that's sometimes the hard part too, right? It's like, why did
Yeah.
I get this? What happened? Um, so
Right.
that's a little bit in a nutshell what my journey has been up to this point. And of course, there's stuff after, but I just wanted to um, share that.
Yeah, I had a couple of thoughts while you were speaking about the the doctor saying to you, because you're a therapist, you should know how to handle it. And I'm thinking part of handling a situation is to be able to talk to somebody about it. Are you expected to talk to yourself? It's like so. Um, yeah, of course. Just because you're a doctor doesn't mean you never get sick, right? Just because you're a therapist doesn't mean you never need to talk to somebody. So I commend you for writing that down because I'm sure it's hard to ask for help or to speak about what you are, feeling or thinking. Like in my case, I was still in the cult when I came down with fibromyalgia. It started off as a really bad flu. My whole family got the flu. And I was told by my cult leader, Marlene Sweeney, I like to say her name any chance I get because she earned it, that I was in disobedience to God, that was, the devil was lying to me and I was believing him, and my sin nature was in agreement, my flesh, she called it, was in agreement with the devil, and that's why I was sick.
Mm,
And of course, you internalize that stuff. That's probably going to make you sick too, right? So the rest of my family, all my kids, my husband recovered from it was basically influenza. And then it was 9 months before I was diagnosed. I couldn't get out of bed. I had body aches, nausea, just depression. And I go to the doctor and they say, "Are you depressed?" "Well, I'm in pain all the time and I can't move." "Yeah, I'm a little depressed. I'm a little sad, and I'm a little anxious about it." Yes. So they thought I had Lyme disease. They swore I had Lyme disease. And I had 5 different tests and all kinds of, I was like a pincushion for months. They never came up with anything. And then finally I went to Dr. Google, and this was 2006, I think. Um, and of course I thought I had everything under the sun. I thought I was gonna, you know, croak, right? But there was a few things that I read that I was like, I went to my doctor and said, I think I need to see a rheumatologist. And so they referred me. I went to a rheumatologist and he did the pressure point thing. And I almost jumped out of my skin. And this was like, what, how many years ago is this now? 17, 18 years ago. And he looked me in the eye and he said, "I believe you." And I just cried my eyes out. Because, like, first of all, that's what I needed to hear because I was being made to feel like I was crazy or in sin or because that's what who knows, right? So the fact that he said, "I believe you," was just such a weight off of me. And since then, I've tried different medications, I've tried coping, I've tried support groups. Sometimes they're not that supportive. I actually feel more supported here than I did in any fibromyalgia support group. So yeah, it's been a journey, and I find that I'm not alone. And to find out that you have some experience and can relate. It's just I'm sad that you do, but at the same time, I'm glad we can talk about it. You know.
right. And yeah, I mean, the last thing you needed was to feel guilty in terms of why your fibromyalgia was happening or why you were getting these symptoms in terms of in the context of the cult, right?
Yeah.
I mean, just feeling that extra level of this is crappy. This is not good. I don't like this. And, people are telling me, giving me reasons why they think I have it, from a cult perspective and
Right.
putting
Like
some of that on me.
Scientology would be I pulled it in, right?
Right.
And there's always yeah, that guilty thing. So it was strange because when I left the cult and I got a new you know, physician, what do they call that? assistant, I think. My main doctor, my primary care doctor, was an older lady, and she sat down and she said, I'm getting a lot of patients around your age, because it was around 35, I think I was when I was diagnosed. And I was in my probably late 40s at this point. And she asked me about my past, and I told her about, the fire and the foster home, the call, all that. And she said, I'm not surprised. She said, because I believe that, trauma can also contribute to this, long periods of trauma in your life. And my rheumatologist had said that to me as well. But I was like, really? I'm a trauma survivor? Like, I guess it should be obvious, but I never thought of myself as that, because you weren't really allowed to think of yourself as any kind of victim, right? So it did help me to understand, like, oh, okay. Yeah, I guess I am a trauma survivor.
Yeah. And, I think not all people with chronic conditions necessarily have trauma, but a lot of trauma can manifest in things like fibromyalgia and chronic illness and chronic pain issues. And there's a lot of reasons for it, I think. And um, I'm not an MD, so I won't,
Right.
I can't go on the neurobiology level. But what I do know
Right.
is um, I mean, so for instance, with fibromyalgia, we know it's a condition of the nervous system, right? And we also know that trauma drastically affects the nervous system. There's
Mm-hmm.
actually even brain changes that happen because of trauma. And, you know, that's why, I mean, some of the common symptoms of like PTSD are, um, exaggerated startle response or increased arousal, like um, physical arousal, and
Mm-hmm.
your nervous system is on. You feel on edge. Um, the stress itself, the word stress is like your body. Think about anyone that's in a high stress situation. It's your body gets tense and it gets
Mm.
just it there's various parts. People get stress headaches. They get, I mean, the body can um, deal with that PTSD or those traumas in so many different ways. And one of the ways can be something like fibromyalgia, because there is that nervous system aspect
Yeah.
to it. Um, yeah, and I mean, we see things like people have pain experiences with no, like they go to 1,000 doctors and they say, "There's no cause for your back pain." Well, where'd that come from then? Oh, well, it
Mm.
started right after that traumatic event. Then you can look at that and say, "Oh, okay, that's a
Yeah.
chronic back pain," and maybe by addressing that trauma, we can start to unravel some of this. You know,
Mm.
maybe the pain will start to, you'll notice some changes in the pain. Um, but that's, as you well know. I mean, I'm glad that you had a doctor that says, "I believe you," or
Yeah.
"I believe you," because so there's another whole category called medical trauma where
Yep.
you go to the doctor and you're not heard, you're dismissed, um, you get misdiagnosed. Many people have to go to many doctors, a handful of doctors, before they get accurate diagnosis.
Absolutely.
And you know, I've had people go to doctors with real significant pain experiences, and oh, that's just XYZ, or that's just because you're a new parent or something. You're just
Right.
experiencing that, or oh, that's just because you don't sleep well. No, I don't think so.
Right.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, you know your body. I remember my doctor trying to explain it to me, like your nervous system, like kind of like a dial, right? Like a volume or something. And your dial's just turned way up. And I guess it could be kind of like that, living in a heightened like fight or flight type state all the time, and so that kind of help me to understand. It's like just telling myself, like, it's okay, right? It's like it has helped me cope with the pain. Usually, like right now, I'd say, I live at probably always about a one to two. It gets up to a 3 to 4, 5 or so, especially when I wake up in the morning. Sometimes it's even higher than 5 when I wake up. It usually takes me a good half an hour. when I actually wake up, unless I got to go pee really bad, I tend to just do some gentle stretches and just kind of wake up my mind. I'm in a fog and I don't sleep usually more than 5 hours at a time. So I usually need a nap around 3 to 5. My friends know, and Kelly can tell you. I usually check out, well, if I can, can't always, right? Because
That sounds
life
like my
happens.
slump too. Yeah, that time
You're like,
period. Yeah,
yeah, I've always kind of had that. Like I remember after school or after where I worked at a school for many years and for several years. And yeah, that after school, like 3 to 5, always had that. But we have a bunch of questions already. Would you like to tackle
of
some?
course. Let's go
Right.
for it.
That'll spark some more conversation, I'm sure. All right. Thank you, everybody. I just want to say real quick, these are new Cubs I have. John Van Geest, new member. Thank you so much. I get so excited when I get new members. Uh, Eula, thank you so much. Welcome, welcome. This is great. Okay, I don't know if you saw my interview 2 days ago with Mama.
Yes,
Mama's
yeah,
our
I did.
first question. Mama's live question: could being essayed at 17 cause a person to have illness in their mid 40s?
Hmm. I mean, it's quite possible. Sometimes um, it doesn't. I mean, it doesn't always. Consequences of a trauma like that wouldn't always necessarily come up right away.
Yeah.
Um, there's a lot of just shock, obviously, involved with SA and suppression because life moves on, and it just like there's some obvious and rightfully so some repression of the event of what happened of the trauma, and surely there can be some illness that develops. I'm sure
Yeah.
afterwards. I also have um, people I've worked with different SA experiences that, we talk a lot about whether that or, it just your relationship with your body also. Um,
Mm,
aside from chronic illness, if a lot of the trauma of SA, I mean, um, when there's a violation so tragic and so, terrifying, then they might see their relationship with their body may change. And so work on a lot of trauma work obviously involves a lot of empowerment, finding your voice, being able to express and open up and share what you need to share regarding what you've experienced. But also empowerment also involves reclaiming some of
mm,
that. So we might start with as simple as like, when the last time you just did something nurturing for your body, put on, and this can be for someone's relationship with their body with chronic illness, chronic pain too. Like, do you have a scented lotion that you like, or a lotion that you could just softly rub on
mm.
your arm? Start there, or on your
Yeah.
hands, and just
Yeah.
in a very soothing, nurturing way.
Mm,
Because a lot of people just, it's this almost hate relationship or a distancing from their body.
mm. Yeah, that makes
Um,
sense. Do you think there's any like possible reason or connection with certain illnesses that tend to manifest around that kind of early to middle age, adult, like 20s, 30s, 40s, a lot of the autoimmune diseases? I know you're not an MD, but I'm
yeah.
just, I just think it's just curious. I see, especially things like fibromyalgia, things that are autoimmune or don't seem to have like a, medical reason. Um, it seems like that kind of age. So
It
I'm
does,
just
and I'm
curious.
not sure.
Yeah.
I also work a lot with, and I'm involved with the MS community, multiple sclerosis,
Hmm.
and there is, yeah, sometimes people, it's a little bit later at times, but it can be earlier. There's a range there too, but it is middle to a little bit older, like let's say 30s through 50s, kind of that span, that 20 years
Mm-hmm.
period, where people are most likely to be diagnosed, like you see more recently Christina Applegate in the news. Like she's, in the last 3, 4, or 5 years, she's been diagnosed and she's had a pretty steady progression. So I don't
Mm,
know why that's the case. Exactly, it could vary depending case by
right.
case,
Yeah, I just thought that was, yeah, it was interesting.
depending on the particular condition or illness.
Right. So got Maya says, you never know what diagnosis Dr. Google will give you.
Very true.
That is true.
Very
Yes.
true. I've had some really bad ones, and then I look, and then it could be like something so simple, right?
Yeah. I was worried when I first, had these symptoms and started going online. I thought I had MS. I thought I had meningitis. I thought all kinds of things. So yeah. Yarn Prepper says, comment, I never knew fibromyalgia can be from trauma. At 59, things are still coming to me about abuses I had from my parents. I had totally blocked out my childhood.
Yeah,
Mm,
yeah. Yarn Pepper, I'm sorry that you had some pretty strong difficulties and trauma there, um, about the abuse. And again, it's not. There's so much that needs to be found out about fibromyalgia and about a lot of these illnesses. Um, but yeah, there can be a link. There's also, especially with autoimmune, there's a connection with um, inflammation. So
hmm
a lot of times people have said, well, of course, like you said, of course I'd be feeling depressed if I can't get out of bed and I'm in pain all the time. And not necessarily a fibromyalgia. Fibromyalgia is kind of a different category. It's not as much. They don't think it's. There's some controversy whether or not that's an autoimmune disease. Right now, I believe it's not classified, but
hmm
with a lot of autoimmune diseases in particular, inflammation, controlling inflammation is a huge thing, right? To control um, the manage it, I guess. And
hmm
so, but we also know that inflammation in the brain has been connected to mental health. So, like depression, even things like schizophrenia, I think some studies have found. So,
Oh,
it's not just so you might say, oh gosh, I'm having a really bad day with, um, let's say with my Hashimoto's and I feel really down today. Well, am I feeling down because I can't do as much, or am I feeling down just because I have a lot of inflammation throughout my body, right? And
right.
that's
Yeah.
affecting my mental health too. So that's
Yeah.
another consideration that people are finding more and more out about.
Yeah. I remember in my medical records, it says something about, well, I have some osteoarthritis because I'm getting old. And I have also, put down muscular arthritis, which that doesn't make sense to me. I think it was just like a way of saying the symptoms of fibromyalgia, but I don't think that's an actual thing. I don't know why it was written down in there, but it does kind of feel like that sometimes. And I noticed that if I eat a lot of nightshade type vegetables, it does seem to contribute to inflammation. So I get more stiff, sore, and you just feel like you can't move,
Right.
especially my knees and my legs. So I try to just listen to my body and cut down on certain things. And yeah, it seems like I don't know if you have this, but with fibromyalgia, it feels like an all over body thing, but then it can kind of pop up worse in certain areas. And I feel like some things get kind of like um maybe it's stress or something get more magnified, right? When you
Mhm.
have like some type of symptom. Like if I'm feeling like I have like acid reflux or something, I think maybe even just the stress of like having something like a cold or something going on in your body. Or I know I'm throwing a lot of things out, but it does feel like just everything like piling up. It's raining out and this and that. And it's like I'm always trying to figure out what's wrong and how to fix it. But then sometimes I just have to center myself and say, you know what? I've got to just calm the hell down and not try to figure everything out. You know what I
They call
mean?
it analysis paralysis,
Yes.
Marilyn.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, that's one of my traps I get into sometimes too. With various, I'm an overthinker with various parts of life, but especially with the health, the physical health. definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, because what did this? What caused that? Did I eat a
Mhm.
nightshade? Did I, you know, did I overexert in walking yesterday, or did my sleep? How was my sleep? And I think
Yeah.
when I'm talking to people with, you know, clients that I work with chronic illness, chronic pain issues, a lot of it's like balance, obviously, of, and that's a prime example of it. It's like you want to be aware of what's going on for you to the extent that you can be aware of some of it and say, okay, well, maybe, you know, I need to make sure I get better sleep, or maybe, I
Mhm.
just need to make sure my stress is under control. But not, and so you can speak to it to your doctor, right? Like they're going to ask you, Marilyn, what's your symptoms? What have you been
Right.
experiencing? How is it better or worse? Um, and there's apps for that. No, there are apps for it, but but
Right.
you can do it that way. But just to be aware of it, but yet not to, like you said, just be in this state of constant. What's this? What's that?
Yeah.
I have this little thing in my elbow, or this pain in my earlobe. What's going on? Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I had
so
to
it's
stop watching Grey's Anatomy even though I really love that show. It was just I thought I had a glioma and a melanoma and this oma, all the omas, and I was like, "Okay, this I'm turning into a hypochondriac." So,
you
yeah,
should go
I
to watching House instead, right?
yeah. All right, we got Jazzy girl,
Hey, Jesse
Sarah. Hi
girl.
there. Question: Is it so that trauma can bring onset of fibromyalgia? Do you know if depression can bring on chronic pain too?
Great question. Again, kind of speaking to the point earlier, um, trauma can, for different people, manifest in different ways. And I don't mean to be not as specific in that answer, but it can, um, definitely, I think, lead to people's experience of physical issues. One of those
Mhm.
could be fibromyalgia. And again, and since it is a nervous system, issue, fibromyalgia there is a big nervous system component to it. Um, and in terms of kind of dysregulation, there's also dysregulation to trauma. Are those things correlated, or is there causation there? Could it be a combination of both? So it's yeah, I would say there could be. Now I don't want to say that it's a direct cause or anything, but our again, our bodies, when we talk about trauma, there is what they call body memories. Our bodies
Mm.
absorb some of the trauma,
Yeah.
and so that can really have an impact on, um, our systems, systemically, and how we're able to try to release some of it. And that's why, and I'm not going to speak to this. I think Jamie Mustard's interview with Aaron was really good and I watched it, about the dual sympath. I'm not going to say it.
Sympathetic
Thank
nervous
you.
system. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not early for me, but it is early.
Right.
Yeah,
No, it's still early
that
over there
you're right.
on the Left
The
Coast.
reset. I mean, and another one of, EMDR, which I know is not as newer to that, but it's,
Right.
there is something in the brain and in the nervous system that is at play with trauma. Obviously, there's dysregulation there, um,
Mm.
and I just want to say, I got certified about a year and a half ago in, um, a type of psychological intervention called pain reprocessing therapy, which is, it sounds very similar to a lot of the trauma informed therapy, which is basically, in a nutshell, it says your body has these sensations in your body. They call them sensations, not pain. You have sensations in your body, and your brain misinterprets those as pain. You have physical
Mm.
pain, but
Right.
there is no structural cause to it. Like if I break my arm and I have pain, okay, I
Mhm.
get it.
You know where, yeah. Mhm.
But if I have something like, fibromyalgia, or a migraine headache with no neurological cause, or like I said, lower back pain, and there's like no reason. I've gotten, a bunch of MRIs or scans and nothing's
Mhm.
wrong. Well, then where's it coming from?
Mhm.
So it's because, and there's this whole process of like tracking where the sensation is, and sending messages, actually telling, it sounds kind of like sometimes out there, but it's like actually
Yeah.
telling your brain, this is not dangerous. I mean, telling
Right.
yourself,
Mhm.
this is not danger. This is not
Mhm.
dangerous. You're safe. This is safe.
Mhm.
And a lot of the trauma informed therapy, there's overlap there because people, like um, I've listened to some of the SBTV folks, and it's like sometimes when you experience trauma, your mind can go back to that place. And all of a sudden, and people have described this to me, your body feels like it's
Yes.
like in it, like you're that 5-year-old kid, or
Yes.
you're that
Yeah.
7-year-old kid that's experiencing that trauma. And
Absolutely.
physically you feel it, emotionally you feel it, and
Mhm.
to redirect the person back and say, okay, remind yourself you're here right now,
Yeah.
and you are a grown person, you're an adult, and you're safe. You don't have to worry about that thing or that person hurting you or whatever the trauma was.
Mhm.
um, you're safe. So I see a lot of overlap in that pain reprocessing therapy and also trauma work, because again, it's that retraining your body that there's safety there. You don't have to, and by inherently telling your body there's safety, there's physically, you can kind of, there's this calmness that can come about.
Yes.
And I'm obviously
Absolutely.
distilling that pain reprocessing therapy down to very simplistic terms, but essentially that's what it is.
Yeah,
So,
that totally makes sense. I mean, I've always been a very sensitive person. I was told when I was a kid, we watch those movies with people getting their head chopped off because they didn't take the mark of the beast. I mean, it was just crazy stuff about, in like the end times and all this. And I lived in fear of going to hell. I lived in fear of the rapture and all this. And now I look at it and it almost seems like a horror movie, right? And it kind of was. It really was a horror movie that we were made to watch. But it was it they, we were told that it was real, right? So
mhm,
I've never really been into horror movies. I've never really been into thrillers. I don't, because I think because of that trauma response I had when I was little, I would get like headaches, stomach aches. I would just feel sick. And sometimes I will have that like when I see something, that's fake, but it's like I still have that real quick reaction. And I'm like, then you tell yourself, it's just a movie. It's just, you know what I mean? It's not a big deal. So I've had to kind of do that too with my past, dealing with it in very little chunks, but it's like, okay, that's the past, and I can kind of have closure and be like, that's behind me. I'm okay now. Um, I can't, you can't go back and change it. And I really wouldn't want to change a lot of things because if I didn't join the cult, wouldn't have my husband, my kids, all that, right? So that does make sense to just like ground yourself. And like yesterday we were talking on my morning musings about how we've been talking about knowing your triggers, and I stumbled upon this thing called glimmers. It's like knowing your glimmers, right? Things that make you happy. We're talking about fur babies and watching silly commercials about from the 80s with hairspray from the 80s and things like that. It's like I realize that it seems so simplistic, but it really does give me that lift where even if I feel
right,
the pain, it dials it down where it's not, it's there, but it's not. You know what I mean? So I really, that helps me because if I were just sitting here without talking to all of you in my own mind all day, worrying about where these symptoms are coming from, what good would that do? You
right.
know? So,
No, and that's
mm,
so needed. It's like, I'm sure it just gives you like a sense of like breathing room, just that exhale of, um,
yeah.
which is so important, so important.
So we got Jazzy Girl has a lot of questions today. Thank you. Do you think my chronic pain could stem from several really bad bike accidents? What about repressed homosexuality? I came out at age 39. My life changed drastically after I came out. Hmm.
Um, you know, that again, um, without knowing, obviously, I wouldn't. I don't know if I could speak to this, but the like bad bike accidents, Jazzy Girl would be. There's more than just the physical
Hmm.
injuries I'm sure you suffered, and I don't know the exact nature of them, but there's often, um, the accident itself could be traumatic or scary, or um, and so yeah, I mean, if there's so if it what we call when there's no physical cause to something, like structural cause. I mean, if you say, okay, I got some injuries and I should have recovered, but I still have long lasting pain and there's no real reason for it, per se, we call that neuroplastic pain, or that's called neuroplastic pain oftentimes. And so that, like I was talking about this type of therapy, it could be, and then repressed homosexuality. I don't. I guess with that, it's more, I would say suppression of emotions is
Hmm.
suppression of self, um, can obviously be very stressful. So in that regard, um, I don't know if it would be chronic pain per se. And I always say the person knows their body best. They know how
Hmm.
their body deals with stress. For me, I've had this past year was quite stressful with, my father was sick for a long time, and after I would go there to visit, I'd be like helping with things and trying to do things, and visiting him in the hospital, whatever. And then I didn't really notice the physical stuff until I got back here to California. And then
Hmm.
it was at one point I had like a pretty much a tension headache for a week straight. And I was like,
Hmm.
What's going on here? Oh, okay. Because I tend to get headaches when I'm stressed out, or, when something really strong comes about emotionally. That's one way
Right.
it comes up for me. So I always say to people, really, tap into your own body, your own intuition, and your own wisdom about your body, and know yourself, because um, you'll
Yeah.
know how, let's say, suppressing certain things about yourself, how that stress will come about, how that will exhibit. I'm sure you're the same, Marilyn, right? There's probably
Yeah.
certain things.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of questions along the same lines of, do you think this situation or that situation could have brought on my fibromyalgia? There's a lot of looks like there's a lot of watchers that have people in the chat and in this community that have those type of conditions. And the fact is we don't exactly know,
Hmm.
but there seems to be a pattern. And I think that, trying to like give yourself permission to believe yourself and to advocate for yourself and to let people know, what's going on and how you feel, and not feel, you know, like you're being accused of being crazy or whatever. It could be stemming from a lot of different things, but just again, giving myself permission to be like, okay, this isn't something that I brought on. It could be any number of things, but just the fact that that I'm okay, that I can like realize that, yeah, it could be because of my trauma, and that I am a trauma survivor, because I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't even allowed to even think of myself as having gone through some things that were not okay, that were just not, they weren't destined from God. I don't think God wants you to go through those things. But yeah, it's just crazy, the tricks I play on my own mind. So there was a
Yeah.
couple other things I wanted to put up. There
Hmm.
was something about nightmares. I thought this was a really good one. Jazzy Girl again. Thank you for all the great questions. I've done CBT 2 different times with therapists. It was very effective, but I still have nightmares. How do I get away from it? How can I realize that I'm safe?
Um, so if you're speaking about, in particular, PTSD, um, nightmares related to that, because nightmares can be a part of PTSD, as well as like intrusive thoughts and flashbacks. Um, One thing, though, in general, that I often talk to people about with nightmares, and I won't, Obviously, again, it's for educational reasons, not necessarily
Mhm.
your specific case, Jazzy Girl. But if there's like a common if there's a common theme to some of your nightmares, so if you have a recurring nightmare, um, for instance, let's say I'm saying, I'm running through, um, I'm running away from a monster, and that's a recurring nightmare I have. Um, and I wake up just before the monster's coming closer and is about to get me. I might encourage the person after they wake up, and it's a very strong nightmare, and they're scared, to write down how that memory or how that nightmare, if they had their wish, how that nightmare would end. So, in other words, end it in a from a place of strength. Like, what would you do to that monster? Let's say he doesn't get you, or you're not scared that he's going to get you. You turn around, and what now? What's going to happen? Do you take out a sword, and do you, tell him to get away from you and he leaves? Um, so sometimes we have nightmares like that, or maybe there is one where the monster gets you, or I'm just using this as a random
Right.
example.
Right.
But then you wake up and say, how would I change that dream? How would I change that narrative? Sometimes that can be very therapeutic and healing and helpful, because it allows you, again, going back to the empowerment, is it empowers you to take more control now. Because
Mm.
some of these dreams, especially if they're linked to PTSD, or these nightmares that are linked to PTSD, there are subconscious going on overtime, right? They're saying, okay, well, it's, you feel powerless, or you feel like, try to identify what's that emotion underneath there, what's going on with that nightmare. And that's where the help of the therapist could be really helpful, for them to help you process through that. And
Yeah.
that's just one thing that you could do, obviously, to kind of work through that. And then again, when you wake up from that nightmare, or as you're going to bed, those safety mantras, just remind
Mm.
yourself, I'm safe, I'm calm, I'm okay. I have control, I have choices. All those things that people didn't have during the traumatic event, especially if it was abuse.
Right.
There's a sense
Yeah,
of
I like that. Just
powerlessness. Yeah.
empower. Yeah, you're empowering yourself. It's like you're taking back your power. And you were
Yes.
sleeping and the monster was coming at you, but you can go through that guided imagery or whatever to kind of, you know, slay your own monsters, right? I like that. I think
Mhm.
that would be very helpful for me, definitely. And then we got along the lines of nightmares and sleep. Yarn Prepper wants to know, question, any sleep tips? I already take 5 milligrams of melatonin, which helps fall asleep, but I can't stay asleep.
Okay. One thing in general I recommend for sleep is sleep hygiene is the term. If you Google that, there's a lot of different resources, for sleep. And I always say, if you, and this is advice from professionals, not just me, so don't just take my word for it.
Mm.
If you wake up and you're tossing and turning, a lot of people say, well, I woke up in the middle of the night, like right, on prepper, and you're tossing and turning for like an hour or two. If you're doing that, I would say no longer than like 15 minutes tossing and turning. Get up, get out of bed, go in another chair, another room, read a book, or do something that might be calming for you, and then go back to sleep. And you say, well, some people say, well, that will wake me up even more. But what happens over time is, if you toss and turn in your bed too long, your bed gets associated with restlessness, not restfulness.
Mm. Oh.
And so, and a lot of people also, um, just be aware, like sleep hygiene, the only thing that should be done in bed is sleep and sex, right? So, um, because people eat in their bed, they, especially in light of like COVID and people working remotely, people work from their bed on their laptop, and
Right.
they watch TV. I mean, that's not the worst, but so sleep hygiene. There's a lot of different things that people can do to ease. It sounds like easing out, getting to sleep is not the issue, but kind of waking up and not being able to get back to sleep. So, but
Mm.
calming, self-soothing things to kind of ease back into to bed. And then you look at lifestyle things, like, are there things that, um, are mentally activating you before bed? You know,
or
Like
like,
talk
yeah,
to
if you're like eating, I don't know, chili dog or something before bed.
right, physically,
I
of course.
swear to
Yeah.
God, it just sounded really funny to me. Like it just came out of my mouth, but
Now I feel
yeah,
like
that's
a chili dog. Thanks.
don't lay down after.
Right,
Or like
right.
or like a lot of clutter, like, around. Because I remember
Yes.
when my kids were little, I used to, read. I don't know, is it was online? Yeah, it must've been online. If anybody's heard of Fly Lady, it was this, middle-aged lady that was, like, teaching you how to, like, clean your house or whatever, and she would say, that your bedroom first, just have you shine your sink in the kitchen, right? And then she'd say your bedroom should be clutter-free because that's where you rest and you make love and all that stuff. You shouldn't be surrounded by all of your devices and clutter and dirty socks and all that. And I was like, you know what? That actually makes sense. And then in the morning, he says, like, well, I don't always make my bed, but to make your bed to kind of like, okay, that's done. And now you now it's like, this is kind of almost like having your day be structured more is like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, that just seemed to help me. Not that I always follow it, but I always remember that when my bedroom, like, is becoming the dumping grounds with, like, laundry and, you're always afraid you're gonna have company, so I'm just like and then I'm like, "Yeah, does not look restful. This doesn't feel restful." So and then having your
Well,
phone buzzing all night too, that does not feel
yeah.
restful either.
Well, yeah, in addition to the chili dog and the clutter, I would also add in there um what you just said is, if even like text messages, we can't control who's texting us and when, but we can control how much we look at things
Mhm.
or what we do with it. So I always say, if there's, and I've done this myself, if someone calls me or texts me and I'm really like trying to wind down my evening, I'll say, hey, I'm just not, can we talk tomorrow? Or I can call you tomorrow, because I know that it may bring up emotions, or it might stir
Yeah.
up, or even if it's just a very engaging conversation, then my mind is active.
Right.
And I'm
Right.
trying to just wind down all levels,
Mhm.
um, not doing a lot of busyness. A lot of people are, oh, at the end of the night I do my dishes, I put in a load of laundry and do this and that. Well, then again,
Right.
it's the
Yeah.
so a lot of
Yeah.
those sleep hygiene tips help.
Hey, I think, we tend to take care of other people better than we do ourselves. And when, my kids were little, like, yeah, I wouldn't feed them chili dogs before they went to bed. It was like we put our PJs on, brush our teeth, get into bed, read them some stories, rub their back, tuck them in, shut the light, all that. Yeah. So,
Who's doing
not that
that
we
for
need,
us, right?
right,
Yeah,
exactly. So, yeah, we can be our own moms. So I tell everybody and
exactly.
myself, it's like, be your own mom.
And
Speaking of
especially,
mom,
yeah.
Mama,
All right.
thank you. She
Hi,
gifted
Mama.
5 memberships. Thank you so much, Mama. Thank you. I appreciate that. I love when I get new little cubs. It's so exciting. So we got some more questions and comments. Maya, comment. I really wish all doctors could understand that we know our own bodies best. I have lived in my body all my life, so I know if I have pain or whatever.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's part of what, like, just advocating for yourself and, you might have to get a second opinion.
Sure. Or
Yeah,
third or fourth. Sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yarn Pumper, comment. I am disabled from fibromyalgia, but I turned down disability. I wasn't up to the fight. Yeah, you're not alone. It's been suggested to me many times to, start the SSI process, and I'm like, you know what? I I think it's fine for people that need to do that, and,
Yeah.
um, it's totally okay. It is usually a fight, but for me, I've been blessed and not have to, rely on that, but I can, totally understand how people would need to, and it is absolutely can become, um, disabling, and, yeah, I understand. I had to quit retail because I couldn't be walking on the pavement, on the concrete floors all the time,
And
and
I was just,
during COVID.
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, no, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I was just going to say, to kind of dovetail on that comment, was, I'll have conversations with, folks about just the word disabled and what that means to them, and what some people have reclaimed it. I've seen this a lot in the the chronic illness community, like using the, again, empowering, bringing the power back to
Mhm.
themselves. And I've even seen this in the SBTV community, using some of the terminology and jargon, um, reclaiming it. And I think that's part of empowerment, is saying, but there's a lot of people, and have their own process of not wanting to think about themselves as disabled, and
Mhm.
that word is so weighs heavy on a lot of folks.
Stigmatized. Absolutely. Yeah. I've heard it described as otherly able, right? There's other things that you can do, not even necessarily for income, but I think, and that's something I wanted to kind of segue into.
Mhm.
If anybody has any other questions that are different, we can always go back and look. But I was thinking about, we have talked about some coping strategies, some sleep tips, which really is great, helpful. Some dietary things that you might have to uh, kind of avoid or adopt. You said some ways of thinking, like taking your power back. I'm just trying to list some positive things that maybe we can, kind
Sure,
of go down
of course,
the line. I know there were more. So those are
sure,
things that just came to mind that we talked about, and maybe if you have any other
of
thoughts about
course,
that, just coping strategies and
yeah.
yeah.
Um, so actually, I do. I took a few notes just to kind of get my thoughts together before we met today or this morning. Um, and I had, a while back, wrote like this. They asked me to kind of, for the National MS magazine, to talk about some like tips for managing holiday stress, but I think it
Mm.
applies to what I use oftentimes for just coping in general. Um, and that I call it the 4 Ps. So I'll go through it. And, everyone likes their acronym, so I thought,
I love
you got triple C up there, so
I love
I got
that.
quadruple P. And I'll just briefly touch on them. So the first P is prioritize. Um, and this one can be difficult, but it's basically, prioritizing. A lot of people know, from the spoon theory, and energy
Mhm.
levels, and trying to to negotiate those or navigate those day to day. And prioritizing for me has meant, and hopefully for others, is living more with intention. So
Mm.
aligning what you do day to day with your values, and what's really important to you, and that may change, right? As an example, I was a contract psychologist for, a company that contracted with various school districts around the area, and I enjoyed it. There was flexibility in my hours. At the time, my son was young, and he was well taken care of. But I was like, okay, this is good. But at some point, post illness, driving, and one of my districts I worked in was like 45 miles, 40, sorry, like 30 to 40, depending on traffic here in Southern California. It's a wonderful thing. It
I
was
bet.
30 to 45 minutes away one way. And I thought, to sit in the car with joint pain and muscle pain,
Yeah. Yeah.
and especially when you have a little one at home, you need that energy to dedicate to being a parent. It just wasn't anymore part of my value set. I was like, I need to find a different path here. So, and now, like, my son is very active, and sometimes, it's about, do I go out and play, with him, or ride bikes with him, or do I clean the bathroom, right? And so
Right.
some days I might have energy for both. Some
Hmm.
days I don't. And people can probably relate to this. Before someone was diagnosed, and quote, when they didn't have the, that illness, they might have been able to do 10 or more things a day. Energy wasn't even part of their mindset.
Right.
But
Yeah.
now it's like, okay, I might have to shore that down to 5 things in a day I could do, or maybe on some days two, or maybe, right? I mean, we kind of,
Yeah. Absolutely.
so, but I think, which gives more meaning to life in terms of the title of what you put on here is thriving. When we start to behave and do things in our day that are really tap into what's meaningful for us, and what's, then I think that's going to give it anyone, uh, a better quality of life. Because if someone says, well, health is really important to me, and then they're sitting on the couch watching Netflix and eating potato chips, I mean, nothing against that. Go for it. But,
Right.
right, if that happens day after day after day,
Mhm.
and they're not getting
Mhm.
outside for like a walk or doing some stretching or whatever they can do, then it's like, well, you're not living according to what's technically important to you, right?
Right.
So that's one of them. The second one is just plan, like being realistic about expectations of yourself, and this can be so hard for people, but it's so important. I talk a lot about adjustment and acceptance. Adjusting to where you're at and meeting yourself where you're at, and then the acceptance piece is so difficult, can be,
Mhm.
because how often do we compare ourselves to that previous person that before before we got this, whatever it is,
Mhm.
right? And it's like,
Mhm.
well, I used to be able to do, well, I used to be able to do this. Now today I can't do that. And so inherently there comes grief and loss with that.
Mhm.
Um, but taking sometimes incremental steps, like challenging yourself. Like I love dancing. I took dance classes as a young girl. I love to dance. In my younger wild days, I used to go to clubs and all that. And I love just, I don't even think the drinking was part of it. I just love dancing. But now it's like if I were to dance all night, my body would feel it,
Yeah. Oh,
But
yeah.
I still love music. I still love movement that way. So again, it's, you visualize like what you could do, you plan what that might look like for yourself. Um, you know, um, some people love travel. It's like, how would that look for you? Would that be okay
Mhm.
for you? Right. So it's again planning and um, some people feel like they have to go to a party. They either have to go or they'll just, if I can't go for the whole time, I have to stay home. No, you can
Right.
go for 30 minutes
Yeah.
if that's all you can take. Right. Sorry, I'll be real quick with these last ones.
Oh, it's okay.
Pace being like consistent with yourself. Um, you know, pacing yourself and what you can do, but
Like that.
also because oftentimes what we experience with our physical issues are, I always say, consistently inconsistent, right? So we need to be consistent with ourselves
Mhm.
and try to prioritize that. And then just last one, I said peace. So that's my four P's. But to be present and enjoying the moment, like I'm really enjoying right now, just talking
Me
with you and
too. Yeah.
answering the questions and
Mhm.
not thinking too far ahead in the future, not thinking too much in the past. So just being
I
really
love that.
taking time
Mhm.
out for yourself and enjoying what you have right in this moment.
I love that. So, priority, I remember pace. So, what was the other one? Planning,
Yeah.
priorities, planning, pace, and peace.
Mhm.
I love that. That's great.
And then
Now,
self kindness and self compassion. That's my
yeah, yeah,
last two because that's so important.
yeah. And I was thinking, too, in doing that, being able to communicate to people around you, like a spouse, a partner, kids, friends, little grown sisters, younger sisters that have like so much energy and tons of kids and can do several things all at once all day long, but they're younger than me. Okay. Yeah, my younger sisters. And it's always like, why can you only go one place one in a day? Well, when I was your age or when I was younger, before I had my diagnosis, I could do a lot of different things in one day. I could go to the mall and walk around for 8 hours. I could do that. And now it's just like that's the last thing I would want to do. So I think just being, I don't know what to call it except for just advocating for yourself, even with people around you, just saying, hey, yes, I will go to the birthday party, but I can only stay, yeah, for like a half hour or so. And I have gotten snide comments like, oh, you got to get your beauty rest, or oh, you got to, and I've heard, people even, in my family, in my extended family say, oh, you got to use it or lose it. And it's like, who are you to decide what I have to use? you know?
Well, again, there's that balance for you. Again,
Yeah,
rest is not always best, and I'll say that. But you, going back to the comment earlier, we have we know ourselves the best. So
right.
the people around us, sure, they can say, "Hey, you know what, Marilyn? Maybe your husband. I don't know if he does this, but you know what, you haven't been out for a while and gone for a walk. Maybe just try. I know that you're feeling like your body is whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe his opinion you'll take, but um, yeah, definitely. The communication is key because sometimes, unfortunately, we have to educate, if that's the right word, the people around us about what's going on for us because,
Yeah.
you know, many times sometimes people physically don't, from the outside, don't change. So, well, last year you could do that. Why can't this year now you can't?
Right.
Um, why do you need to rest in the middle of the day? Like, I do the same. I mean, I'll go lay down, even if I'm visiting, family or whatever. I'll say, okay, I just need to go rest for a little bit. I just am going to go lay down. Um, and taking that time out and not like, again, they just, and if they have their opinions, they have their opinions, but
Right.
you're doing what's right for you.
Yeah, I'm
And
fortunate that my husband and my kids really do understand, and they help me. And that's funny you should say that with Duncan. Yeah, sometimes he's like, "Uh, I want to go for a walk," and he never guilts me about it or be like, "Oh, you're just sitting around the house." Like, no, he can tell like if I'm down, like if I haven't crocheted for a week or two, he'll be like, "Are you okay? Like, you're not taking walks or you're not crocheting, you're not doing, it's like the things that make me happy." So,
yes,
yeah, he knows that, usually it's something that's kind of bothering me and I am more in my head, so yeah, it is good to have surround yourself with people that will, understand and kind of help you. And yeah, and I
exactly.
think too, just getting out of myself too and helping other people. I do a lot of volunteer work. I have the nonprofit that helps the fire survivors like myself, and yeah, just doing things like that really, paying things forward, that makes me feel good and it gives me purpose. I think that just because you're not in a quote 9 to 5 punch in punch out job doesn't mean that you can't, do things and make a difference and just be busy but not overwhelmed, you know. So
Right.
yeah.
And that, yeah, exactly. And knowing that for yourself and what, and I think that's great that you have, and many people do have that. Hopefully that, I'm hopeful also that many
Yeah.
people also have that support system, whether it's a spouse, whether a partner or a family member, a friend, a neighbor that can kind of check in and say, hey, I've noticed, like you said, this, that, and the other, and
Mhm.
kind of can be that. I was going to say mirror, but it's not the right word. Kind of a way to kind of show them, hey, this is what I'm noticing, and I'm a
Right.
little bit concerned. Maybe get back to your crocheting or get back to, you know,
And yeah, and doing it out of a place of like, caring about you instead of like, well, how come you never show up for any of the part? You know what I mean? That's gonna make you want to be, no, sorry, I don't want to go. So
yeah.
yeah, for sure. But
And
I'm gonna
I
go
would
ahead.
just want to say that um, because they say mental health is health, um, I'm considering too. I mean, I know we're talking largely about chronic physical conditions, um, and that can include a range of things. We've been talking a lot about fibromyalgia and autoimmune, but it can be, diabetes, it can be
Mhm.
heart disease or uh, respiratory issues, but also mental health. Some of these same things can apply to that too. I mean, really educating people of like, I have um, chronic depression. Some depression is episodic, but some depression is more long term, and people need medications to manage it. And so I consider that just as much of a chronic illness or chronic condition that needs care and management and treatment.
Mm.
Um, Obviously, I'm in this field, but I just wanted to,
Right,
kind
right.
of point that out and highlight
Yeah,
that because
absolutely.
there
And
is
I like
that
what you
part.
said early on about, taking away the stigma of
Mhm.
saying, "I need, some mental health treatment." And yeah, I think that it's good to be able to voice that and not feel like you can't, like you have to hide it. Because a lot of things, if you're walking around in crutches or wheelchair, that you can see, right? But things like fibromyalgia or even mental illness or things like that, it's, you know, it's hard because people don't sometimes aren't as understanding about it.
Sure.
So there are a couple more questions, if you don't mind,
Of course.
just
Any
along the lines
questions?
of some things that you mentioned earlier. But where was it? I think you said you knew some things about Jazzy Girl Sarah wants to know. Question: do you know much about EMDR? I've heard people say it really works for them. Hoping you might have awareness of case studies.
Sure. And Jazzy Girl Sarah, if you want to, if it's okay with you, email or get in touch with Marilyn to give you your email address. Actually, I think she posted my website. You can contact me through there.
Okay.
Just and
Yes, I
I can
did.
share some case studies with you.
Mhm.
EMDR started out with war vets, and at the time, like a lot of things, it seems like this happens, right? It seemed kind of like this. What's this eye thing? What are they doing? It seemed very out there, and there's been a lot of research backing to it, and it's um, very well established now and very very widely practiced. And what it is essentially a type of I don't want to call it rewiring, but a type of, it's called bilateral stimulation. So um, by there's also a way that you could do it that people like hold these little clickers, and there's like a little bit of a buzzing that could be a way people do it too. But um, by the way in which they do they process some of the traumatic memories. They go through this specific type of protocol that they do, and um, have have them guide them through like a type of eye movement um, way that they would process it. And I'm not certified in it myself, so I can't speak to um, my experience administering it, but I know it's been very helpful for many people. um, Again, it's that combination of processing trauma and
Right.
in the same thing of having a physical component to it, right? That biological or brain chemistry component. So
Let's see. We got. Thank you for that, because I was wondering about that too. I've heard that it has helped quite a few people.
yeah,
Repays. I'm not sure what this is in reference to. I think it's Lori Plays is a retired sheriff's deputy,
wow,
and she went through a lot of physical trauma, and believe she's retired. I think she was injured, so injured in probably in the what do you call that, in the line of duty, right? Line of duty. That was a fight I won. It got me to a place where I can survive. And you are surviving and thriving. Lori Plays. She has a channel. She's out there
wow.
doing audits in the streets of Clearwater, Florida, where the quote mecca of Scientology. So yes, you're amazing. There's so many strong survivor stories in this chat, not even ex-Scientologists. There are some, and there's also people that are, quote, never in, that have overcome so much adversity. And, you're talking about having a support system, um, not only in, quote, real life with your friends, your family, your community in real life, but I feel that here too. I feel like we've built an online community where there's so much support. So,
And I think that also I want to give credit to you as well as some of the other creators that really have created that environment, because you all, I mean, with your mods and with the people in the background, right, they're doing it, but also with the way that you present it, it's, we're not going to put up with mean nastiness on this in these chats. We're not going to deal with, we want constructive discussion and meaningful conversations, and it's a safe place for people
yeah.
to be able to share these things, because it's not easy, it's hard, and a lot of things do come up for people. So
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. I just like think of it as like sitting in, my living room or whatever, and just having coffee or tea with my friends and say, "Hey, what's up? What's on your mind?" And we're not in a cult, right? So we can ask questions, we can talk about
yeah.
things come up, and it is sort of like a friend chat. So, uh, Maya says, I didn't know this is Women's Day, but happy Women's Day to all the beautiful ladies here.
Nice.
Thank you. And we can maybe make this our last comment. This is great. Kelly knows to start these things because I like funny shit. Comment, cats, bats, and flowers. I have Cushing's and arthritis, both hips replaced within 6 months of by 40 years old. I've dropped my pants in the middle of a parking lot when it's been suggested that I'm not disabled. You're like, what? See?
I love I love that, and I don't know if I should be concerned for cats, bats, and flowers. Um, no, and I think that, to be honest, that's one of the most frustrating things. When people like shame or kind of question people that have like even disabled placards in their cars and parking just, you
Yeah.
know, um, disabled parking spots. It's like, and you don't quote, don't look disabled. It just
Mm-hmm.
floors me, like, and I've actually, because of my experience, I've taught my son that because he's made a comment like, oh, that person, doesn't look. And I said, well, you never know. You never know. Sometimes people have things that go on for them that you can't see.
Right.
Um, I have a question for you,
Absolutely.
actually, Marilyn, if I
Me?
could.
Sure. Yeah.
Yes, and it's a lighter question.
Okay. Sure.
I was told, because I'm a fellow yarn person,
Oh, that's great.
as
Yes.
and I do knitting, or I knit. And I was told at one point when I was in a really cute, I was in Salt Lake City actually visiting, it's a lovely city. And I was at this like little cute, um, like a yard, like a boutique yard store in a house kind of, thing.
It sounds like heaven. Sounds
I
like
know it
heaven.
does, doesn't it? It was. Um, but I was of course saying that I was just gonna look, and then I end up, with a bag of a few things.
Hmm.
Um, and the ladies there said, and my husband was there with me, she said, there are some people that are like that are knitters or crocheters, and some people that just like to collect yarn. So I'm wondering which category, or both, which category, because I know your spatula collection. I'm wondering if you're a collector. Are you a collector of yarn? Are you a crocheter, or both?
Oh boy. Well, I do like me some yarn. I stopped collecting yarn that is not really like practical for me. Like the really fluffy yarn. I don't tend to make like scarves and things like that anymore. It's funny. I've been using this as an example lately. I crocheted this for my son, and I took it back to use it for a pattern for something. But I made a Hulk Hogan,
Oh,
and
yes.
so like
That's great.
fluffy wool yarn or that lightweight kid yarn, or even cotton yarn with my I'm kind of developing arthritis. It doesn't have as much give. So lucky for me, I find that I do, it's called amigurumi, right? um that just the cheapest like red heart yarn from Walmart, or my favorite is Lion Brand. I like that. Yeah, so just three or four ply, is it four ply acrylic, like medium weight yarn, that's what I use.
Okay.
So but I do collect it, I do. Yeah, this is just a small
Is it really? You have a
representation.
yarn stash.
I have some, there's a guest bed right in front of my desk here. There's some under there. Don't tell my husband. Shh. The back room, yeah, there's yarn. Clicked yarn, yes, 6 huge bins. There you go.
Oh
See
gosh.
never end.
I
Yeah,
had
there's
I
probably
had
some in
some of
our bed
my
too.
yeah, I've known people that have like a whole room where there's just like cabinets floor to ceiling that's just all like cubbies, all around that are just yarn. And I just think like, and I know I have my own, so that's why I was curious. I mean, not like that much, but
Yeah, I've seen whole walls of yarn. Yeah, with like little, yeah, I've seen those.
all right, just
I
curious
belong
because
to a whole bunch of Facebook groups with people
I
that show
see
off their
that
yarn stack.
I've noticed in your lives you have that same kind of yarn back there. So I was like, is that only her yarn that she uses?
Really
No.
move. No, I mean I've got drawers here. Okay. I have all this too. This all different types of colors, and these are the ones I pretty much work from now because I've already pulled them out. I've already started them.
Okay.
So, but those are all the backups. So, but they have moved a few times, and then I've got some up there too.
Oh,
See
I
it
didn't see that. See, she's hiding it from us.
everywhere.
Okay, now I know. It's not just the spatula. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I am a spatula hoarder. Well, you never know what you're gonna need. I only have 13 spatulas now because my husband literally dropped the spatula like last week and didn't bother to pick it up right away. The dogs took it and they just made short work of it. But I can't quite figure out which spatula it was.
Well, I should have
So
counted mine. See, that should be a thing. You should like everyone that comes on should just count their spatulas before they come on, so we can do like a poll.
I know. Well, I asked Reese because I unveiled them on a stream and I was just like, is this normal? And she's just like, I'm sorry, honey, 14 spatulas is not normal. Like, never mind. So I don't want to ask a clinical psychologist if that's normal.
No, I have. Well, I have more than two. I mean, I don't know if I have 13, but yeah, it's maybe like a half dozen, maybe. And they all
Yeah, you
have
never
different,
know.
like you said, they have different purposes. I
Different
mean,
uses. Yeah, I have a fish. Well, I don't really eat fish, but Duncan does. Fish spatula, pancake spatula. You need the wider one, and then you need stiffer ones for certain things. And yeah,
slotted ones. Oh yeah,
yeah,
there's a bunch.
exactly. Oh, I should put this up just to clarify because I tend to take things out of context sometimes, and I
Oh,
want to I want to make sure I clarify. Lori Plays is referring to fighting for benefits. Okay, yes, they don't
oh, okay.
make it easy, and while you're dealing with illness, you have to fight for your income. Yeah,
It's terrible.
that's
Well, and
really tough.
there's a lot that it's common practice. I've heard that they'll deny you. Sometimes you'll get denied uh, first, and then you'll get accepted or something. From some people, I've heard that. I don't know if that's a common
Yeah,
practice,
I
but
have heard it's like yeah, sometimes it takes like 4 times to get it, so you have to kind of be persistent.
yeah,
And I just wanted to put this one up. Curran Mercer, I'm taking a trip to the beach. It's about a 4-hour drive. As much as I love the ocean, I'm dreading the drive. Yeah. What do you think? Like maybe take breaks,
yeah.
walk
Um,
around. I would be very
take,
stiff for 4 hours. Yeah.
yeah, take breaks. I mean, obviously, if you're doing it by yourself and you have to, if obviously you have someone that can share the drive with you, take breaks. Hydrate, all that stuff. But I would also say there's another thing that would help, which is the phrase is improving the moment. So if there's anything, podcast, a wonderful
Mm,
YouTube channel that you like to listen to on SBTV now, um, the
we don't know any of those.
yeah, right, an Audible, like some kind of book that you want to listen to, music, also, and of course going back to the people like you and the question, the person that asked the question, if there's anything that makes it physically more comfortable, like if there's pillows behind your back, or, some people have heated seats that help, or,
Mm,
you know, putting on more air conditioning or heat or whatever, wherever you are. I guess if
right.
you're going to the
Yeah.
beach, it probably might be warmer, but, um, those kinds of just
Yeah. I like that.
making it more comfortable for you.
Yeah. Yes. Self care. And I got to put this up. This is hilarious. Marlene Sweeney. My cult leader, I guess, decided to pop in. I have a chronic case of the narcissism. Well, at least you're a self-aware narcissist,
Right,
because you
right. There's
because you weren't
I
20
can't
years ago.
I can't help you with that. I can't help you with that, Marlene.
So no, we should do a crochet, a yarn knitting yarn and crochet stream because now people are like, hey, I guess my name gives me the way about the hoarderland.
It
I
does.
love
So
that.
I'm curious, Maya, what kind of art supply hoarder are you? Or if we know already.
I have put up some of her amazing sketches. I don't know if you remember back when um, Reese had been talking about how um, little Gertie was born in a manger next to the
Mhm.
Lord.
Mhm.
And Maya is the one that did those sketches. I don't know if you saw them are you on the Facebook groups or anything?
Oh no, I'm not
She
right now.
does
No.
beautiful sketches, and she did some sketches. I wish I could pull them up. I'll pull them up next time I see you. But yeah, she did one of my spatula, a burning biscuit, a Rodney, and also me just here with my little background. She's
That's
amazing,
wonderful.
amazing artist. Then we've got Joelle. I used to crochet hats and put vintage antique buttons on them, but I lost my love for it a few years ago. How do I get it back?
Mhm.
Maybe I tend to I don't know if you have this Gretchen too. It's like I tend to get tired with something and I'll have to try something else. So
Yes.
maybe, start crocheting, something, start with a little pattern that looks interesting to you. And maybe hats aren't your thing anymore. You know, I don't know. That's what
Yeah.
I would suggest.
I think if it's a motivation issue, some people, if they're going through something, it doesn't necessarily have to be depression per se, but just kind of a slump with things.
Yeah.
Um, Sometimes it's just about like you said, dipping your toe back in and seeing how it feels. So, like just looking as a first step, like looking through like
Mhm.
certain patterns and seeing if anything strikes your interest. Another thing that I think happens, and I don't know for her in particular, for that person, but I find if I start a project that takes way too long, it
Yeah.
demotivates me at times if I'm not in the right
Hmm.
headspace.
Hmm.
So maybe taking on something that's a little bit, and I don't know how long a hat for her would take, or if it's like you said, just getting a little bit too boring for her,
Hmm.
uninteresting. But maybe something that's quicker she can do, that's will take less time. It's a little bit easier because sometimes that can help kind of change the momentum.
Yeah, absolutely. And I tend to have several things going at once. So whatever strikes my fancy, it's like, if I'm working on, Rodney's or like little Z News or these guys, I made 4 of these in a week. This is Rodney's husband, Raymond.
Oh, Jesus. So what
Really,
are you doing? What are you doing? You're just keeping those for posterity? Or are you gonna give those away as like
well,
prizes?
I've touched these ones too much. So I think I'm gonna have to make more because I did a
Too much
short.
information, Marilyn. I'm just kidding.
Well, I mean, I've been hugging them, and I did a short, my very first and only short so far. It was a rendition of a parody of "I Will Survive," and it was about a troll that was sort of plaguing me for many months. So he's picking prepping up. So I was actually they were my backup dancers, and I kissed them, and I'm like, nobody wants. I kissed them, and I showed some. Well, they weren't burnt, but some biscuits. I said, "Don't burn my biscuits." So yeah, they're my backup dancers, and I I don't
They're
think anybody
cute.
wants my germs because I kissed them. So and
Maybe
I have
are you going
should
on
I
a
make a
cruise?
rain?
Well,
I am, yes. Should I
you should
bring
take
one?
them on the cruise.
I
Yeah,
should.
as
He's the
like
captain.
mascots.
I'll have to maybe make some miniature ones too. But yeah, should I make a rainbow Raymond? I call him Rainbow Raymond. Emoji because I have emojis now
Is that
in
going to
our
get you
chat.
demonetized?
Um,
No, it
I
wouldn't, right?
well, he has a hat on, so I don't think so. And this guy, he's just a rainbow rod. He's just a so
Go
I
for
will
it. Go
see.
for it.
We'll see.
Yeah.
I don't know if it gets demonetized. It's worth it. It's just really
Yeah,
fun,
right. That's
right?
right. You got to live
So,
your life.
oh, Blakey's here. Hey, Blake. Nerds are my people. Awesome. He's talking about knives. Blake, those knives and swords are so sharp. Oh, he's collecting. Or I think we're talking about
Oh,
collecting
collections.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Crochet. Yes, we will do a crochet stream at some point. I got it. A lot of different things. Well, this was
Yeah.
so much information. I won't say fun, but it was definitely enlightening and it was fun in a way. I love
Mhm.
talking to you, and
Cool.
I hope everyone comes away with some positive vibes and maybe some ideas of ways to cope and make our lives better, like improve our, I don't know what you call it, just way of living. I don't know. Sometimes I can't find words, and I think that is part of the fibromyalgia. Is like I get this brain fog where I can't like find the right words to something. So I just
Yeah.
you know what I mean.
Yeah. I have the same. I have the same. So no worries. I mean, that's
Quality
part
of
of it.
life. That's what I was
Quality
trying to
of life.
say. Quality of life.
That's why you
Yes.
have the chat. They'll tell you,
Yes.
right? To help you out.
They think for me.
They're
Yeah.
very helpful.
Everyone's
Well,
saying
yeah.
thank you.
Thank you so much, Marilyn, too. I really appreciate it.
Thanks to Gretchen and beautiful mods. Yes, everybody. This is such a great community. And I did hit Duncan with Rodney. Yeah, I did. I hit him in the
Really?
head. Well, I was
He's
trying to see if he was too hard. I'm like, ow, that actually kind of hurts. Oh, we
Uh,
got a burnt biscuit here to support.
there you go. There you go.
Thank you,
I
burnt
love it.
biscuit. All right. Well, if you ever want to do this again, we can even talk about crafts next time or whatever. I
Yeah,
love talking to you, and this
great.
was so much fun. And thank you so much, Kelly Copter, in the background.
Thank you,
Is
Kelly.
Yeah, give Kelly some love. And all right, everybody, we will see you next time and have a great day. Thanks so much. Bye.